So there you go. Now I've got some sweetness to it.
Nice. Marshmallows.
Mm-hmm.
I have no marshmallows in mine.
Oh, no.
It's sweet.
It's already sweet. Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Plenty sweet.
Okay, that sounds good, Amy.
So here we are.
Hello. Oh, it's so nice to see you. And it's so sparkly. And welcome to our holiday-themed live event. It's so exciting.
Event with my new special Christmas mug.
Wait, can I see it a little closer to the camera? Oh, that is very cute.
It's
actually
I
like
not even that cheesy. It's
no, not at all. Well, look at what I did. I'm using the same cup that I almost always use because I feel like it has like a holiday-ish theme anyway. It's got these birds with, it's got like a pine cone on its head.
Oh my God, they're little chickadees.
Yeah, they're so cute. So I figured, well, and I don't have a special holiday-themed mug, but this one really felt like it worked.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Moxie's coming to say hello, of course.
Yes,
Hi.
hello, Moxie.
Hi, Moxie, but you can't get in my lap right now. Ooh, I don't know how well that's going to go over. So, can I see your cookies?
Yes. So this is the cookie.
Ooh, that looks nice.
It's really light too. So.
And you said it's German gingerbread?
Yes.
Oh, I love gingerbread. We love gingerbread in this house. James loves gingerbread. If we make gingerbread cookie dough, we chill it, but he goes in there and sneaks pieces of it. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure there was one time when he basically just ate the entire batch that was left in the refrigerator because we didn't make the cookies fast enough. They got eaten and very much enjoyed. Oh, hi, Leslie. It's so good to see you. Hi, Leslie. Welcome to our holiday party. I hope you're enjoying some holiday cheer, maybe a cup of tea or some cookies or hot cocoa. We have cookies and hot cocoa here in our home. I don't know.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Gingerbread, anything. Love gingerbread. So you love it too, Leslie. Oh, that's good to know. Got a gingerbread, the gingerbread sisterhood.
So we're just waiting for folks to join.
Carrie, I'm just noticing that this beautiful sparkle behind, it matches, the color behind you matches your color palette theme. Like I'm seeing the green kind of almost like aquamarine color matches your shirt and your painting and the back wall. And I love it. So
Thank
nice.
you. I had a lot of fun decorating. And of course, we meant to be decorating the minister's study at Community Church of New York, but we had to move online.
Yep.
Last minute.
Because of a potential COVID exposure, but we don't know if it was me. I was exposed to COVID, someone who tested positive after I was around them. They were wearing a mask, but it's hard to know. And we were around each other a good portion of a couple of days in a row. So we're just taking all the precautions and being very cautious, which is an important thing to do right now, especially with all of the numbers, the positive rates going up all around the country, and just recently really, really shooting up in New York City. So we need to be careful. So here we are instead of in the minister's study.
We're going to be making cookies there and sitting around the table, but this will be good too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, how about we get our program started?
That would be great. Welcome everyone to our Rev'ing Up live event celebrating the holiday season and wrapping up our season 2 of Rev'ing Up. And the minister's study is, we meant to be in the minister's study at Community Church of New York, where Reverend Peggy Clark sits and prepares for worship and has meetings and so forth. It's a really lovely space. And due to a COVID scare or potential exposure, we decided to pivot online. And luckily, our producer, Amy Wilson, was able to pivot at the last minute. She is such a wonder, and we're so lucky to have her helping us produce and get this lovely podcast, keep it going and keep it fresh and keep it moving along like we like it to do. So we thought that we would start with a chalice lighting.
Yes. And Carrie, will you light the chalice while I do the chalice reading?
Yes.
To get us started? Okay, great. Thank you.
I have the fire.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So far, I'm so sorry. I want to make sure that I start in the right place. Okay. So this is, let me just say a little bit about this reading. This is for this reading was written for the third Sunday for Advent. In this holiday season, may we find peace inside ourselves. May we be peace for those around us. And may we renew our commitment to bring peace with justice to our community and to the world. May we be peace.
Thanks, Meagan. That was great. So we thought that since it's the holiday season, we would bring in topics, questions from the season. And so we're going to start with a poem by Stephanie Noble called In Celebration of the Winter Solstice. Do not be afraid of the darkness. Dark is the rich, fertile earth that cradles the seed, nourishing growth. Dark is a soft night that cradles us to rest. Only in darkness can stars shine across the vastness of space. Only in darkness is the moon's dance so clear. There is mystery woven in the dark, quiet hours. There is magic in the darkness. Do not be afraid. We are born of this magic. It fills our dreams that root, unravel, and reweave themselves in the shelter of the deep, dark night. The dark has its own hue, its own resonance, its own breath. It fills our soul not with despair, but with promise. Dark is the gestation of our deep and knowing self. Dark is the cave where we rest and renew our soul. We are born of the darkness, and each night we return to the deep, moist womb of our beginnings. Do not be afraid of the darkness, for in the depth of that very darkness comes a first glimpse of our own light, the pure inner light of love and knowing. As it glows and grows, the darkness recedes. As we shed our light, we shed our fear and revel in the wonder of all that is revealed. So do not rush the coming of the sun. Do not crave the lengthening of the day. Celebrate the darkness, here and now, a time of richness, a time of joy.
That's beautiful.
So, of course, Monday at around noonish is the winter solstice, the point at which the sun hits the southern, whatever, southern tropics, and then moves back up.
So the Earth's tilt will have been, as the northern hemisphere will have been at the furthest, tilted the furthest away from the sun, and will begin tilting back. So the days will begin to lengthen. I love that. There's so many things I love about that reading, and thank you, Carrie, for that. Did you say it's in Worship Web? Or did you? Oh, okay. I would love to read that more. I think that this idea of, rather than thinking of the darkness or the night and the long nights as like a bad thing or a negative thing, looking at it as a positive thing and a generative time. I think that winter is that time when I was just listening to a podcast about wintering and the idea of wintering. And I realized, I had this revelation. It was like, oh, maybe this is one of the reasons that I love winter so much, because I grew up in the North and in northwestern Pennsylvania, where it snows a lot. And we were just in, the short days and the long nights, we were inside, and it was quiet. It was generative. It was the time when you could go outside and see all the stars because the nights were so clear. And it was just a really beautiful, restful time. And did you see Leslie's talking to us? Thank you for interacting with us, Leslie. Carrie, would you like to talk for a minute?
Leslie brought up one of the purposes why I chose this reading is because so much of metaphor sees dark as bad and evil, and that I think sometimes comes out as racialized undertones. So reclaiming the darkness and seeing it in a positive light, in a positive way, rather than demonizing it or being afraid of it, I think is one of the steps to kind of deconstructing some of the racialized aspects of our culture.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I, as a white person, I remember when I first started to recognize the ways in which I was swimming in white privilege were around things like statements, and words that were used that were so racialized and were and are contributing to this white supremacy culture. Things like blacklist, and just constantly saying that, like, if it's bad, then we'll call it dark, or we'll call it black. The blackness, the darkness, and that's bad somehow, and that things that are white are light and bright and are good and bring hope, and and just once you start to realize that and start to think about it and hear it, for me anyway, I just couldn't stop. It was just like, oh, it's everywhere. And being able to lift the veil off of that, and have that kind of revelation is was for me a really important step on the road of recognizing my privilege as a white person.
Absolutely. So Errol is asking us about memorable solstice services or ceremonies we've done. I've participated in a few. That was probably one of the ways in which I started creating ritual and creating services, because I was a lay leader at the time, and so helped others create these alternate worship spaces with lots of fire and greens, and certainly I'm rooted in pagan traditions of the earth centered kind of rituals and so forth. So winter solstice is always a magical time for me.
Me too. We one of the most memorable, thank you for that question, Errol. And if you have one, Errol, please feel free to share so we can hear about yours and Leslie's also. My most memorable right now, the thing that popped into my head right away was when I was serving as the religious education director at the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in Alexandria, Virginia. This is a suburban congregation outside of Washington, D.C., on some land in a suburb up on a hill. And on that hill, because the church owns it, there is a big, massive field on the top of this hill. And it's where we do like the Easter egg hunt and campouts and things like that. So we every year for the winter solstice had a solstice fire and a ceremony, and we would do different kinds of ceremonies. There was a reenactment of the Oak King versus the Holly King, which the kids would love to reenact. And it's kind of like, you know how in some places, in some church communities, it's like who gets to be Mary and who gets to be Joseph, like for the holiday pageant. This was like who gets to be the Oak King and who gets to be the Holly King. And they had these like fake wooden swords, and they would battle it out and just have so much fun. And we did a lot of different really beautiful rituals. And one of them would involve going inside into the sanctuary where it was dark, and there was a spiral of candles on the floor, and you could walk into the spiral and walk back out. It wasn't a true labyrinth because those are really hard to recreate. It was just set up as a spiral, and then we would sit around the outside of it and sing songs about the sun or the sun returning, and just like even just like popular songs or anything. It was just really, really sweet time, really fun. Being outside a lot was very special about that too. Just being outside in the field with a big fire underneath the stars. It just made it a really special time.
Yeah, mine were mostly inside because being up in Connecticut, one never knows what the weather's going to be like in December. But it was always after dark, and had an altar and a central light source, and just one of the things I loved about it was chanting to bring back the light. Just trying to get that energy of, yes, we're going to bring back the light. And so that's always with noisemakers and voices. And so that's always really fun. Just that moment of darkness and then bringing back the light.
And something that I wanted to say that I think circles this back to what Leslie brought up and what we were talking about with race and the racialized under or even overtones around dark and light and nighttime and daytime. I wanted to say that one of the things that I realized about with winter solstice is that I really love the almost like Buddhist nature of thinking around, we might be celebrating the return of the light, but we wouldn't have that to celebrate. We wouldn't even know that light was returning if we hadn't had the darkness.
Right.
So it's kind of like the yin and the yang of like, without the darkness, we don't have the light. Without the light, we don't have the dark. And looking at what is, I'm really going to be sitting this winter, really sitting with this idea of what do I love about winter and longer nights and shorter days, because I really do love it. I really, really do. And I know a lot of people don't, because it can be kind of sad, right? Like we might get that, a little blue Christmas happening. There's, an actual like diagnosed thing that happens for people when they don't get enough sunlight. So the winter time in the Northern Hemisphere can be rough. So, yeah, Carrie, do you have any advice for people who are sad or struggling in the holidays?
Yeah, I think it happens. I think it's hard to be feeling sad during the holidays, just because there's so much in our media culture about it's a joyful season and it's about family and it's about buying gifts and there's this we have this kind of idea about how Christmas can be and how many of us really have had that experience with Christmas or holidays or so forth, and particularly if you've lost someone in your family or you've suffered trauma from your family, it can be a really triggering time. So I think as we reclaim the language around darkness, seeing it as, for instance, grief wouldn't exist without love. And just because we grieve doesn't mean that love will not happen again in our lives, and it is still there. So it's embracing the fact that the goal is not to be happy all the time. It's to be loving and joyful and authentic, and understanding that with that comes loss and and things that go wrong and things that you don't expect. Like it's just understanding that being sad is okay, and really making space for that, slowing down and taking care of yourself. Christmas season is a lot about community, so reaching out to loved ones and just giving yourself the space to feel like you need to feel. What's some of your advice?
Feeling the feels is always a good one, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have found that, being authentic with where I am at any given time, what I'm feeling, what I'm noticing, rather than trying to cover it up or pretend like everything's okay, or like, oh, well, if I just do these things, I mean, it'll be okay. I think that really acknowledging it and being true to oneself, and then treating oneself with care and love, doing the things that really feel good for oneself. So, if you love to take a bath, take a bath. If you love to have some special scented candles, like get those for yourself, and take care of yourself. Treat yourself like the loved one that you are for yourself.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I've also that's helped me in the winter is just getting outside, regardless of, I mean, certainly if it was really storming out, I would not do that. But sometimes I just get a little afraid of how it is outside. Like, oh, it's too cold, or it's too windy, or it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
And just, putting on clothes and getting out there, it's like, oh, it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So just embracing that it is a colder season, and it still can be great to be outside, whether it's sunny or cloudy or cold or warm or whatever.
I was just noticing one of the comments that was made that I want to make sure we lift up, and it's Amy saying, acknowledging the darkness and loneliness helps.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate Christmas songs that express some sense of loss or sadness, like Mary, Did You Know? A reminder that birth and death are always linked. Yeah. I love that. I think that music is so evocative, and it just, I mean, when I'm sad, it's kind of maybe counterintuitive, but I like to listen to music that makes me cry, or watch a movie that makes me cry. I don't want to watch something that's going to make me laugh, because sometimes I just need to get out the sadness, the tears, the crying, the emotion, and let it get out. And that feels so good. It's such a great release. I like to get into my body and do something that is acknowledging my body. Like, for me, it happens to be doing some sort of yoga practice, but also taking a walk can be, and going outside, like you said, Carrie, and feeling the weather and being a little bit in touch with what's outside, if in nature, if you can. If not, I like to wander. I mean, I like to go around in the city at night too, because there's the lights and things, and it's a different kind of feeling, for sure. And yes, death, like life comes out of the darkness too. right? Like the darkness of the womb, as was mentioned in the reading, and also as the amazing woman with the last name Carr, who is sick and did the speech about maybe this isn't the darkness of the tomb, but it's the darkness of the womb. I loved that. It was around Easter time, at maybe pretty soon after President Trump had been elected. And it was just this beautiful, beautiful speech that she gave that really, I think, inspired a lot of people. It's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly this season, winter is, at least for us in the Northern Hemisphere, where we have significant seasons, it's the vegetation has, for what we can see, died and waits to be regenerated and reborn.
It's under there. It's under the ground doing its things that it needs to do. I love that. James and I used to take walks in Prospect Park in the wintertime, and we would walk around the lake there and just have so many conversations about what are the turtles doing right now? What is everybody doing? Because, there's all this wild fowl and waterfowl and life that's around certain times of year. And then in the winter, it would get really quiet. And especially the turtles we thought about a lot, because we would count we'd look at the turtles. They come out when it's, warm, they get on the rocks in the sun. And it just felt like, just really, where do they go? What do they do? And, of course they can like breathe under the mud or something like that. And they're hibernating and staying warm, but it's just fascinating and amazing, these things that happen.
Yeah.
So, let's see. We have a couple of readings, and we were thinking about moving into talking some about even like Christmas in the winter holiday season. And we have a reading that we wanted to share with everyone, which is, and I think I'm going to start off. Yeah, Carrie, and then you'll pick up. Okay. All righty.
Here we go.
A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, with visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With the little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too.
And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. And a bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
How fun.
Classic.
I
Such a
love it.
classic.
Yeah. Did you grow up hearing that?
Yeah, like I watched all of the TV Christmas specials, the Rudolph and
Oh, the animated classic, the
yes,
really old,
yes,
so
yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
Peanuts, Charlie Brown's Christmas, and the sad little Christmas tree.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, all of that stuff was part of my growing up. And yeah, yeah. How about you?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up Unitarian Universalist, so it's kind of funny because as a UU, who was raised by an atheist and just kind of like a spiritual person, it was just kind of funny that we had such a relationship to Christmas and Christmas Eve. And I just find that really interesting. And I wonder, as a Unitarian Universalist, like how this, what this is like in people's lives. And I think that there's some really interesting history around Christmas and the creation of Christmas in its current form that actually Unitarians played a role in. And I wonder if anybody has any ideas or thoughts about that or any knowledge about it. I'm thinking about the early New England days of Christmas when Christmas was a little bit more like SantaCon. Those of you who live here in New York City might know about SantaCon, but it was rowdy. People were like drinking and partying in the streets, and there was this concerted effort to domesticate Christmas and turn it into a family holiday here in the colony at the time. And Unitarians played quite a role in that. In fact, I think like writing some very iconic songs about this time of year, the holidays and Christmas, and also the imagery, like the like Clement Moore. I'm like was a Unitarian, and like that image of like what Santa looks like comes from him. So kind of amazing and cool and interesting, and we still have this relationship with Christmas.
Yeah, and of course Unitarian Universalism comes from a Christian tradition. And I was surprised being I became a Unitarian Universalist about 11 years ago. And I was surprised that Christmas was such a big thing to Unitarian Universalists. And I grew up Catholic, so of course it was a big thing for me and my family. And particularly the tradition of the midnight mass, which is kind of a magical space where you just go in the middle of the night to church, and the place is packed. And it's just this time out of time, and there was a big organ there, and the music was huge, and everyone was crowded in, like standing room only. And you come back, and Santa's coming in the morning, so you got to get to bed. And yeah, it was just this magical time. And when I came to Unitarian Universalism, they had a very similar experience. I'm like, wow, that's really bizarre, because I always thought of I wasn't aware of the Christian roots at that time, but even without the Christian roots, it's there's something really important, significant about Christmas and Unitarian Universalism.
Sorry, I was just a teeny. If you noticed that I got a little bit distracted, my laptop was going to die, and my spouse very kindly went and got my charger for me and got me plugged in, so I'm good. I hear you, Carrie, and I grew up in a very non-traditional household, and yet on Christmas Eve, I have some very distinctive memories of Christmas Eve. We went to the Unitarian Church in Meadville, Pennsylvania. We lived out in the country outside of there, but we would go into town for church. And we would, yes, shout out for sure to James. And on Christmas Eve, there was a Christmas Eve candlelight evening service. So that alone made it special, right? It was like, we're not going in the morning. We're not going when it's light out. We're going when it's dark. And it was special. And there were candles, and there was this warm glow light, and this, in this town in northwestern Pennsylvania that has there's like a town square in many towns, and there's the important like churches around the town square. Well, this is actually in the shape of a diamond, so we call it the diamond instead of the square. And on one of the points of the diamond is the Unitarian Church, and it's this very old church. And actually, the seminary that we attend, half of it used to be located in Meadville, Pennsylvania. That's why our seminary is Meadville Lombard, because the two came together in Chicago. Well, when I was a kid, we would go, and it was this like New England looking church where you walk in the front doors, and it's big open space, and there's candles everywhere, and it's dark. And then afterward, at the very end of the service, you sing Silent Night with the little candles, and you stream out the door onto the diamond, which is always covered in snow at nighttime in the end of December in Pennsylvania. So it was just this very, like, I grew up with that very special feeling of this is a special time. It's something that's different. And there are rituals that go with celebrating this special time. And so those rituals then, I passed some of them on to my own child, or I started some new ones too. So we have very specific, I think that so much of holidays are really about ritual and memory. And if one has, I obviously, like, I had some bad Christmases or whatever, but I never had anything really bad. So I just ignore the bad Christmases and really focus on all of the good part of it. But for some people, that's not going to be possible. It could be something really terrible. Like you mentioned, if a loved one dies at Christmas time, it makes it very hard. My stepfather died right around Thanksgiving, so I always think of him at Thanksgiving, and it's sad. It is also kind of beautiful because it's such a holiday about family, and so thinking about him and remembering him then is really special. But yeah, it's interesting. Our Unitarian history and how that matches up or doesn't match up to our current theology, but maybe does often match up with our practices, our rituals. Yeah. Leslie says that Christmas carols were her best memories at the Presbyterian Church. Yes, I love singing Christmas carols. It's so fun.
Yeah, lots of fond memories about singing in the choir as a kid and as an adult. Music's been a huge, I think music can be a really important part of ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think it's important, you celebrate Christmas. We also celebrate many other holidays and especially in the winter time. There's all of the festivals of lights, the different winter celebrations, which makes sense. This dark time of year that there are a lot of these celebrations that focus on light. And so we do Solstice. Many of our congregations also celebrate Hanukkah. Kwanzaa is one that I know Community Church celebrates and has a history of celebrating. Do you know much about that, Carrie, or does anybody in the chat, any of our friends here, know about that history?
I know a little bit about it. It's grounded in African culture, and there are 8 principles that correspond with 8 candles. It's similar to a menorah, but different.
It's called a kinara.
A kinara, yes.
Kinara, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I read somewhere recently, and I think it's in Worship Web, where it has like the different things for each of the days of December. There's a different kind of like Unitarian history nugget.
Mhm.
And one of them is around, there was a grant. Kwanzaa was maybe kind of like a reclaiming of holiday time by the African American movement in maybe the 60s or 70s. Actually, I don't know if Kwanzaa, I don't know when Kwanzaa actually started.
Yeah, I think it was the late 60s.
Okay. But it was also like the person who solidified it, or the group of people, did get also a grant from the UUA, or at the time maybe it was the Unitarian Association at that point. So there was some kind of involvement of Unitarians in Kwanzaa, the
Yeah, it
creation
was
of Kwanzaa too.
the Black African back. They
Oh
supported,
yeah,
yeah, they supported the man who was working on creating Kwanzaa. So it wasn't a direct grant, but it was
I
supported by
see.
Unitarian Universalists.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Hey, I see Deborah Frankston is here. Yeah. You
yeah.
see Deborah? That's my mom. Hi, mom.
Hey.
Yay, you're here. Oh. I'm looking up Kwanzaa because I want to know more about it, and I wanted to share more about it. It's always frustrating when it's like, I know this little bit about this thing, but I'm not really sure, and I'm kind of stumbling through it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I do think it's really fascinating. And I know that there is a little girl who goes to the congregation, the Unitarian congregation in Brooklyn, who at her school, in her elementary school, when she was growing up, every year they learned all about Kwanzaa. And there was a song that they sang to share the different 8 principles of Kwanzaa and light the candles. And she knew the whole thing by heart. And we would do a little thing around Christmas time where we would learn about the different festivals of lights that are celebrated around the world and throughout history at this time of year. And she would sing that song. And it was just really, really sweet.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's always kind of a um, interesting season, balancing all of these different holidays and trying to figure out, okay, what's cultural misappropriation and what
Mm-hmm.
is relevant for us to do and okay
Mm-hmm.
for us to do. And so
That's a really good point, Carrie.
yeah.
Yeah. And that made sense to me because she is a Black child who's adopted from Ethiopia, growing up in the US with white parents.
Hmm.
She goes to a majority Black school,
Hmm.
and she learned that song as part of learning about African American heritage. And
Hmm.
so when she shared it in our celebrations at the winter holiday time, to me that felt like appropriate. Like, she spontaneously shared it. I didn't like ask her to do it. I didn't even know she knew it. I didn't even know that song existed, but she did. And I thought that was a really beautiful way for her to get to share something special that she learned. Yay, Athena. Hi.
Athena, yes.
So Kwanzaa was created in 1966 during the aftermath of the Watts riots as a specifically African American holiday. And it was created by Malana Karenga. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but he said his goal was to, quote, give Blacks an alternative to the existing holiday of Christmas and to give Blacks an opportunity to celebrate themselves and their history rather than simply imitate the practice of the dominant society.
Hmm. Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, 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 it's a powerful, the principles are all really good things. Like when I think about how the world could be done, structured
Mm-hmm.
differently,
Yeah.
certainly a lot of ethics to really
Mm-hmm.
consider in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend looking it up. Like, the first principle is umoja, which is unity,
Hmm.
to strive for and to maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race.
Hmm.
There's Kujashagulia, self-determination, to define and name ourselves as well as to create and speak for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, this has been really fun having a holiday live special, and really wonderful to have people joining us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. And thanks so much for interacting with us throughout our season 2 of Rev'ing Up, the Intern Ministers of Community Church of New York podcast. 2 full seasons we've done now. This is our season finale, and we had a full season last year, and now this one this year. And I guess we're going to do another season in the spring.
Yeah. Keep your eyes peeled and your ears open.
And join our Facebook listening community group. Let us know if there are topics you would like to hear from us about. We're always, we're seminarians. We can talk all day. But we love to hear what you would like to hear us talk about. So please do feel free to ask us questions. You can send us emails. You can post on our Facebook group. You can reach out to us individually, any of that. We're here for it. So let's have our closing reading before everyone logs off. This is For So the Children Come by Sophia Lyon-Faz. For so the children come, and so they have been coming. Always in the same way they come. No angels herald their beginnings. No prophets predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that will save humankind. Yet, each night a child is born is a holy night. Parents sitting beside their children's cribs feel glory in the sight of a new life beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end? Or will it ever end? Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting us. And we'll see you in a little while for season 3.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you all.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.